Prudence. My injury, there's a certain angle, which is at, and I put the ticket into the car park, which absolutely, right. Yeah.
Putting your jacket on?
Yeah.
Oh, that's available. Thank you. Oh, yeah. But I don't know. I'm sure the church approves that. I'm sure the church.
Stand. Coronial Court is now in session. Please be seated.
Dr. Dwyer.
Before Mr. Dwyer commences, my name is Abbott, and I seek leave to appear on behalf of Mr. Zachary Rolfe, the witness to be called in this matter.
Yes, Mr. Abbott, we were informed that you would be appearing as counsel today. And I was about to take appearances from everybody. There are some new appearances today.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Dwyer. As I said, before we'll begin with anything substantive, I'll take appearances as there are some different faces at the bar table to those that were here last week. Thank you, and I appear as your senior counsel assisting alongside Mr. Coleridge and instructed by Miss Walls of Walsley. Thank you.
Your Honour, I'm back again. I appear for Narjar, and as you know, I'm instructed by Mr. Derring, and we have the assistance of the Human Rights Law Centre, and Mr. Espy is here from that centre.
Thank you, Mr. Moulton.
My name is McMahon. I appear for the Purrumpuru Committee for Nindamu, and I'm instructed by Dugan and Brian.
Thank you.
Dugan George.
May it please Your Honour, my name is Freckleton and I appear with Mr. Bernard, instructed by Ms. Lau for the Northern Territory Police Force and various of its members.
Thank you.
Your Honour, I appear for Mr. Zachary Rolfe. I'm instructed by Mr. Luke Officer of the firm TGB.
Good morning, Your Honour. If the court pleases, my name is Mullins. I appear on behalf of the Brown family, instructed by Prudence Watts from Streeton Lawyers.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins.
Good morning, Your Honour. My name is Bo, and I appear with Greer Bow and Claire O'Neill, who are appearing by live stream. I'm instructed by Julia Pincus and Christian Hearn for the Walker Lane and Robertson families.
Thanks, Mr. Bo.
Good morning, Your Honour. My name is Amanda Nomska-Kira. I appear on behalf of the Northern Territory Police Association, appearing and instructing me as Miss Ivana Young.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Yes, thank you for those appearances. Before we commence with any evidence today, there are some brief rulings that need to be made. Firstly, I'll deal with the issue of non-publication orders. On Friday, when the matter was raised by Mr. Officer, I noted that the current order was subject to an exception where evidence was referred to in open court. That was the intent and shared understanding of the order, but during its many amendments over the last 3 years, that clause has been removed. To rectify this and to reflect that shared understanding, I'll amend the current NPO, non-publication order, to add the following at Order 6. Order 1 does not prevent the disclosure or other publication of A, any evidence given or other discussion in open court during the inquest, B, any documents, including audio-visual and audio material made publicly available on the Coronial website, and C, any material made publicly available by the Supreme Court of the Northern Territory. I have also received submissions regarding the documents that should remain the subject of Table A of the non-publication order, and I'll deal with them in turn. In respect of item 17 in Table A of the current order, I'm not persuaded that Section 43 of the Coroner's Act permits the suppression of the identity of this person. In my view, while the information may be somewhat embarrassing, it does not contain sensitive personal matters, and nor does the evidence satisfy me that its publication would be contrary to the administration of justice or the person's personal safety. In respect of item 20 of Table A, the interim order was made at Mr. Rolfe's request, and its purpose was to ensure that certain documents would not be picked up by the media piecemeal and potentially misrepresented before Mr. Rolfe had the opportunity to give his evidence. I explained the purpose of the order at transcript page 4917 at the directions hearing on the 28th of April 2023. As Mr. Rolfe is here in court today, Mr. Rolfe, and will shortly commence his evidence, the order is no longer necessary or appropriate. However, I am persuaded that the following documents from item 20 of Table A should for the time being remain subject to the order, except if they are referred to in open court. Those items are 3-6, 3-8, 3-49, 3-50, 3-64 to 3-64F, 3-159, 3-161, and 10-11, and a revised order reflecting this will be issued shortly. I now propose to deal with Mr. Rolfe's application dated the 15th of February 2024. That application raised 3 issues. The first issue was whether I should direct the interested parties to provide Mr. Rolfe a list of topics on which they propose to examine. I'm not persuaded that it's either necessary or fair to request the parties to do so. That's not the course that's been adopted for any other witness, and I'm not persuaded that there's reason to do so now. Unduly repetitive questioning can be avoided in the ordinary course. Firstly, by counsellors who are asking questions, avoiding unnecessary repetition. And also, if there are any objections from any counsel, including Mr. Rolfe's counsel, and then by any intervention that's necessary by me. Having said that, it is expected that there will be some degree of overlap between the interested parties' questions. The second issue was whether I should direct the parties to identify the relevant item number in MFI MMM, which is a document listing a number of text messages, when asking any questions about those text messages of Mr. Rolfe. I note that this was the course that was largely adopted during Sergeant Bowen's examination, and I'm persuaded that it should also be adopted with Mr. Rolfe. So if there is a text message, it should be identified by reference to that document. The third issue was whether I should determine in a preemptive and global way an objection by Mr. Rolfe to answering questions that he says may tend to incriminate him. I'm not persuaded that Section 38 of the Coroner's Act permits me to determine such objections before a question is asked and the objection taken. To the extent that it does, I'm not persuaded that it would be appropriate to determine the application globally, because to do so would give rise to difficulties when assessing what is expedient in the interests of justice. Accordingly, I will deal with the objections if and when they arise. I note that the application was made 10 days ago. It may have been possible to have dealt with these matters earlier had there been a longer period of time. However, it was necessary to with those rulings this morning.
Your Honour, may I say something about your third ruling this morning?
Yes.
I rise not to complain about it, but merely to observe that it would be helpful if counsel assisting at least indicates when she is moving to a topic in respect of which the privilege against self-incrimination might be claimed. That will enable me, then I intend to claim the privilege on Mr. Rolfe's behalf. So Mr. Rolfe has instructed me to claim that privilege, and subject to Your Honour's views, I intend to claim the privilege on Mr. Rolfe's behalf.
Yes, Mr. Abbott, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I'm sure that the questions will be posed in a way such that it is evident the topic of the question.
And Your Honour, I wouldn't want to waste the court's time, waste the coroner's time by having to object to every question. I would suggest respectfully that we deal with it on an issue-by-issue basis. I can take the claim of privilege of the first relevant question. Your Honour can then rule on it. That will determine the course of further questioning, I would have thought.
I hope so too, Mr.
So do I.
Abbott. Yes, Dr. Dwyer. I know that we have Mr. Rolfe in the witness box. Mr. Rolfe, before you give any further evidence this week, do you promise to tell the truth to the court?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Sir, could you tell the court your full name?
Zachary Brian Rolfe,
And which state are you currently residing in?
New South Wales.
You have previously given evidence to this court in November 2022, is that right?
Yes.
Have you read a transcript of the evidence that you gave on the last occasion?
Yes, I have.
So I think you were about 24 years old when you made an application to be a police officer in the Northern Territory, is that right?
Yeah, around then.
What made you apply to be a police officer in the Northern Territory?
What made me apply?
Yeah, well, what was your interest in the role?
I applied to a number of states to be a police officer. I just wanted to be a police officer.
What made you think you'd be a good fit to be a police officer?
I object to this line of
I'll withdraw the
questioning.
question, I'll ask a different
Can I
one.
just,
What were the attributes?
well, I object to the whole line of questioning about an application to be a police officer. I can't see what possible relevance this has to your inquiry. The fact that we know he was a police officer at the relevant time, and I can't, for the life of me, understand why it's now perceived to be relevant and take up your time as to what might have caused him to apply to be a police officer.
Your Honour, our speech will become apparent, but out of fairness to Mr. Rolfe, I want to give him an opportunity to explain what it was like for him as a young police officer in the Northern Territory, including whether it met his expectations, whether he felt prepared for it, and as a lead-in question, it is relevant in my respectful submission to understand what he thought he could bring to the police force of the Northern Territory.
Well, the two are not related necessarily. It
They
be.
might not be, but they might be, Mr. Abbott.
Yeah, but you have to decide at some stage what might be and what might not be. This is the end of the Coronial inquest. This is not the beginning, Your Honour.
It is, and Mr. Rolfe is here as an integral part of the matters under investigation. And what brought him to the Northern Territory, in my view, is an opening question, and I'm happy to hear the answer.
I'll sit down then, but I expect to rise again shortly.
Mr. Rolfe, do you want that question again?
Yeah, please.
All right. You were about 24 years old when you applied to be a police officer in the Northern Territory. What made you think that you'd be a good fit for the role?
I was good at helping people that needed help, and I was good at protecting people.
What were the skills that you thought you brought to the force?
Well, basically what I just said, I was good at that. I had above average intelligence, above average fitness, high level of compassion, and it's good at communicating.
I take it you think that they're the best attributes of the Northern Territory Police Force and you could bring them to the role?
Well, I object to that. Doesn't matter what he thinks are the best attributes.
I've withdrawn the question, Mr. Abbott.
Yeah, but again,
I have withdrawn the question,
we're
Mr.
wasting
Abbott.
time.
Mr. Rolfe, is there anything specific about the Northern Territory or were you just interested in police forces in general?
Police forces in general.
You did an interview with a journalist on the 5th of December 2019, less than a month after Kumanjayi passed away. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You were asked some questions by that journalist about Alice Springs and your role, and you said Alice Springs was fairly eye-opening. You were asked the question, how different is the culture in a town like Alice compared to where you're from and where you lived previously with the military? Remember that?
No, not particularly.
All right, I'll read you your answer. You said, they're different.
Sorry, which interview is it? Sorry, I'm just trying to look it up.
It's the interview with the Australian. It's at 20-73. It's answer 20. He said this, they're different worlds. To be honest, the first couple of weeks in Alice, I felt more comfortable in Kabul in Afghanistan than I did in Alice. You go on to say you got used to it, but it was a different world than Canberra, where I've grown up. Can you tell her all about that?
Yeah, it's been established before, but I guess when we were Canberra's Canberra, Kabul, there's a set of rules. There's I guess one world in Afghan that's a lot different than ours, but we know what it is, and we're stepping into that world. In Alice Springs, I think it's been mentioned many times before, it's basically two worlds colliding. They still haven't figured out how to work together or work together in a peaceful manner, I guess. That's what I'm saying, if that makes sense.
How much of your work was domestic violence related when you got down to Alice Springs as a probationary constable?
I couldn't give you the facts on that, but most of it.
So percentage-wise?
The police should.
Look, he said most of it.
The police should know.
Were you expecting that as a probationary constable?
Yeah, I guess so.
Did you feel prepared for that then, given the training that you've done at college for 6 months and your life experience?
Yes.
What was it in terms of your training or life experience that prepared you, do you think, for that work in Alice Springs?
An amalgamation of everything. I'm not sure, everything up to that point.
Well, I think you gave evidence on the last occasion in November that you hadn't had much experience. I don't think you had any experience with Aboriginal people growing up. Is that right?
We had a couple kids in our school, but not much, yeah. And obviously in the army, there's a lot that I worked with, a lot of lads that I worked with.
You obviously hadn't encountered anything like you had encountered in Alice Springs.
No, I had not.
And in terms of cross-cultural experiences or training, you hadn't had any specific training in relation to understanding Aboriginal culture before you got to the Northern Territory Police Force?
Yeah, just what was in the anti-police training.
I'll come back to that. But in your first year, for example, in the NT Police, did you have much community engagement? Outside arresting people, I mean. Was there positive community engagement?
Yeah, every day.
In what way? Can you give some examples of that?
Every day when we're not arresting people, we're engaged with the community.
Was it in a positive way?
Generally, if we could make it positive, yes.
Can you give any examples of positive community engagement that you had an opportunity to do while you were a police officer in Alice Springs?
Well, I object to this. I can't see what possible relevance this has. Straying the topic of his early years as a police constable may be relevant, and Your Honour's ruled that it is. But if we're going to go in the highways and byways of the early years, we're going to be here for more than a week at this rate.
Not if we simply get through the evidence, Mr. Abbott, and the issues of cultural engagement have been raised in this inquest. Positive and negative interactions. In my view, it's appropriate that we understand the positive interactions as well as any other.
Maybe it is, Your Honour, but taking two examples is, I would have thought, not going to be any help to you.
Well, unless I hear the examples, I'm not sure.
Well, that's the whole point of this, and I object to the accusatory tone that your counsel assisting is using to my client. There's no reason why she can't ask her questions in a much more modulated tone and certainly in a less accusatory tone of voice.
I am not hearing that in the questions that are asked, and in particular, when Mr. Rolfe is being invited to reflect on some positive experiences.
Well, I've already just addressed my objection to the relevance of his being invited to reflect on positive experiences, so I won't repeat that.
My own friend completely misunderstands the line of questioning, and I'll try again. Mr. Rolfe, during your time in Alice Springs, did you have an opportunity for positive community engagement? And I mean specifically with the Aboriginal community.
Yes.
Can you give some examples of that?
Well, I was in Alice Springs for 3 years and I attended over 3,000 jobs. I've been on the road for however many hours that is in any shift, so I don't have any. I haven't prepared for any specific positive engagements here, but I'm sure they may come out throughout the day, or tomorrow, or the week.
All right. Well, outside of the courtroom, I think you expressed frustration that you might be presented in this inquest in a way that misunderstands your level of community engagement or your interest in that work. I want to give you an opportunity to tell Her Honour about some of the positive experiences you might have had.
I won't take the opportunity right now. It might come up later.
At the start, I think when I asked you about what you thought you could bring to the role, you mentioned fitness and intellect and compassion.
Yes.
At the start of your time in the Northern Territory as a police officer,
yes,
would you describe yourself as someone who was compassionate towards the community?
Yes.
Including the people that you were arresting?
I'll do my best. It depends how they acted at some point. Say if they resisted arrest or they fought me, is after they stopped fighting me, I'd be compassionate for sure, yes.
But you're saying that you brought your level of compassion including into that arrest situation wherever you could, is that right?
Yes.
So just listen to this question because it's important. Do you feel like that changed at any time over the 2.5 years or so you were in Alice Springs?
No, I think everyone has a compassion bucket, and depending on the day, what your day is going like, you could either be more compassionate or less compassionate on the day, but I think overall as a person I became even more compassionate.
I just want to go back to your path into the Northern Territory Police Force, and I'm not going to take all that long on this issue, but just signposting it for you. From October 2010 to May 2015, you were a permanent member of the Australian Defence Force. You gave some evidence about that last time. What initially attracted you to that role?
Well, is that relevant? What attracted you to that role? Is that possibly relevant to this inquest?
I just asked my friend to listen to the following questions and wait for it to become apparent. Mr. Abbott hasn't had an opportunity to be in this inquest until now.
No, and I haven't read the 5,000 pages of the transcript either, so you're one up on me on that.
I press the question.
Yes, the various attributes of police, what might be appropriate to look for during selection processes, what might be appropriate to look for or guard against during
I'm sorry,
how they continue their working life, in my view, is relevant. And obviously there is a background here in the ADF, and there are questions that have been raised in relation to how that might impact a person carrying out their policing life. And in my view, it's relevant to understand a little bit about what his attributes were in the Defence Force.
So from my own personal knowledge, this is being asked because the attributes that he brought or the things he did in the ADF might be relevant to his behaviour as a policeman. Is that the line of logic?
That's right, but also there's one of the issues is that there is the militarisation of the Northern Territory Police Force.
Two.
And it may well be said is...
The militarisation?
I'm sorry, Mr Abbott, I'm speaking, you'll have to wait.
All right. I'm not unaware of that term.
Is the issue of the militarisation of the Northern Territory Police Force. It might be said that there are some very positive attributes that the Australian Defence Force recruits bring into the Northern Territory Police Force. It might be said that there are some things to guard against, but that is clearly an issue, and Your Honour would be interested, obviously, in my respectful submission, in Mr Rolf's reflections on that.
I am. I'll allow the questions.
Mr Rolf.
I can't bring myself back into my mindset at 18 years old, but I didn't want to go to university. I wasn't sure what career path I wanted to go down. The army was a good option to grow up and mature. The end state was always being the police officer.
Did you start with an ambition to join the SAS as part of the army?
That's probably very ambitious, but I started with the infantry. That was I guess, a potential pathway.
But the SAS was something that you were interested in from early in your army career, is that fair?
Yeah, correct.
Just a year and a half into your army service, in May 2012, you and another soldier stole tobacco and money from a comrade's locker in an army camp, in a rugby camp, I think. Is that right?
There was no money involved.
All right. It was tobacco, wasn't it?
Correct.
And anything else?
Well, I object to this. What relevance does it have?
It's relevant.
That he stole, allegedly stole a packet of tobacco.
It's relevant in many different ways, Mr Abbott.
Well, if Your Honour could tell me, I can't possibly see the relevance. It happened long ago. It's got nothing to do with the matters in this case. It's not alleged that he is a dishonest person. At least I don't think it is.
Yes, please.
Sorry, my learned friend says it is alleged he's a dishonest person.
It's relevant to his entry into the police force, and it's relevant on credit issues.
Well, I make my objection, Your Honour.
Mr Rolfe, I'm not going to labour the point. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to it. But a year and a half into your army service, May 2012, you and another soldier stole tobacco from a comrade's locker in a rugby camp. Is that right?
Correct.
And was there anything else, or was it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. And I was also drunk at the time, so.
Okay. And how old were you then?
So 20?
You just said I was also drunk at the time.
Correct.
Do I take it from that you didn't regard it as a big deal?
No, so what happened there was I was on an army rugby tour. I was a junior soldier mixed with a number of senior soldiers. We were all drinking heavily. At some point of the night, someone made a bet or a dare, we need to go get cigarettes, who can go find cigarettes. A number of us, again, drunk as we're on an army barracks, went through an open dorm, found a bag of tobacco in someone's room, took the bag of tobacco, went back to our dorm, passed out. In the following morning, I woke up, told my coach I'll be a bit late to training because I had to return the bag of tobacco we stole on the piss, at which point he said, don't do that, I have to tell the MPs. The MPs came, I told the MPs what had occurred, owned up to it, we'd done the wrong thing, and I got charged with theft and I took it.
Okay. And just help us with MPs, what's that acronym?
Military police.
Thank you. You didn't think it was a big deal, but the army did, didn't they?
Yeah, they charged me with theft.
You were convicted in an internal military investigation.
Correct.
The theft. And obviously, you admitted it and pleaded guilty.
Correct.
Told us. You had to show cause, in fact, in you why you shouldn't be terminated, and gather references, etc.
I believe it's too long ago for me to remember the details.
All right, we've got this in the brief. I'm sure I don't need to put it on the screen,
No.
but tell me if I do. You, from what we can see in the materials, you were given a 2-year formal warning for theft.
Correct.
You deployed to Afghanistan from July 2014 to January 2015.
Correct.
I asked you a few questions about this in November 2022, and you explained that you were there to provide force protection from mentoring elements in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Did you see it as part of your mission to be building good relationships between Afghans and Australians?
I don't know if I can answer that question.
The reason I'm asking is about, did you receive any training in relation to that aspect? That is, that part of your mission as an Australian soldier was to work on relationships or nation building.
Well, I think that it assumes that was his mission.
No, it's an open question.
The question assumes that was a mission.
I'll clarify that. Was that part of your mission?
I can't tell you. I believe, you have to look at the mission statement for that deployment.
What about in terms of how you understood it? Did you believe that it was part of it?
I'd have to see the mission statement for that particular mission.
Just put a formal mission statement aside. In yourself, did you think that it was part of your role?
My role was to provide force protection to mentors over there.
Okay, so it sounds like the answer to my question is no, that it wasn't part of your role to build.
If you're asking me about my particular mission, then it becomes a technical detail of what my mission was over there. If you asking me if it's a positive side effect that I could have achieved over there, then potentially there's some situations where I would have engaged with the locals where the ideal situation would be a positive.
Okay, but it wasn't part of what you were instructed to do when you were over there, like it sounds
That you can remember.
I'd have to look at what my instructions were when I was. It's written down somewhere. I can't tell you. I can't make it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked you on the last occasion whether or not you had had any specific training in cross-cultural issues or cultural engagement.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to expand on from what you said last time?
Looking at my the transcript that I said and the questions you asked me, obviously I need to look at the curriculum for the cultural training that I received in the NT Police. But in regard to respecting people who are Indigenous in the NT, I think it would be helpful for me if you could give me a few examples of how I could show respect to an Indigenous person that differs in a Western culture, and I can tell you if I was taught that or not.
Okay, we might come back to that, but can I just focus on Afghanistan?
Oh, you're talking about Afghanistan?
Yeah,
sorry, I was completely mixed up.
No
with what
worries.
you were talking about. I thought you were talking about the other one.
No, we'll come back to your training in the EMT.
Yeah, sorry.
Expounding on that from last time. But in Afghanistan, do you recall any cultural training that you had?
We did have something, yes.
Okay. And I appreciate it was a time ago, but do you remember now anything about what you were taught?
I remember some of the cultural differences, like, for example, in what I was just saying before, if in Afghanistan, men would often hold hands and walk and talk as a show of respect, which is obviously different here. That's a key example of a cultural difference. But
okay. And that's a good example and one that you recall.
Yes.
What about in terms of ways that you might communicate with people in Afghanistan to show respect?
Again, the key example is that hand-holding one. I guess there was differences in how they eat food, the specifics, but again, that wasn't really my job. Like, my job wasn't to interact with the Afghans as much. I was to watch. While the mentors interacted.
I see.
If I was to interact with the Afghans, it wasn't a particular part of my role. It just happened.
Understood. So it may well be that you didn't in fact get any specific training in how to use your communication skills in a particular way.
Correct.
While you were on deployment in Afghanistan, I think I've got the dates right, 28th of August 2014, you made an application to complete the 2015 Special Forces selection process. Is that right?
Yes.
That's the SAS in effect? Is that what we understand as Special Forces?
I think it encompasses the SAS and the commandos.
The application was not supported by your commanding officer at that time, do you recall
Correct.
that?
Yeah.
And that's because, the reason given was because you were still on that 2-year formal warning.
I think so, yes.
How did you feel about that? Did you think it was unfair? Were you annoyed? Something else?
The only thing that was frustrating about that was I believe I received my 2-year formal warning 1 year after the incident, and for that whole 1 year I was basically on a formal warning anyway. So it extended.
Was that part of your decision to leave the army though?
When we got back from Afghan, some things happened with the battalion. So.
There were a number of reasons, is that
Correct.
Is that
Correct.
fair? And is that one of them then, that you could see that that career path wasn't going to be as smooth as you thought it would be?
Yeah, correct. But I guess my my passion for joining the SAS wasn't high enough to keep me in there and waiting for that thing. So it wasn't like the dream, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
If the passion was high enough, I would have stayed in and I would have tried out again, or I would have stayed in the military and rode that out, but the passion wasn't there.
Did you let go of that passion altogether, or did you keep it in your mind as something you might come back to?
I guess it was kept in my mind as something I might come back to, because I guess the option was open for me, as you'll see later. The option was left open for me to try again.
Once the formal warning was over?
Yeah, but obviously I'm not in the army in 2018.
When you applied again?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a different situation. I guess I knew I had a good enough reputation that allowed me. I didn't know the offer was given to me. Yeah.
Well, we'll come to 2018.
Yeah, so I know it doesn't make sense for everyone else, but...
Okay, so you've given pretty clear evidence. You left the army for a number of reasons. One of them is a sense of frustration that you weren't getting into the special forces.
I wasn't given the opportunity, I guess. Yeah, that was definitely not a given thing that if I tried out, I'd get in. Definitely not.
Okay. Between the 2nd of October and the 23rd of November 2015, you participated in a training course conducted by Trojan Securities International, and that was in the US.
Correct.
Right? According to the materials, that course focuses on advanced tactical and firearms familiarisation, close personal protection, risk management, urban warfare, and driving in hostile environments.
Correct.
Right? What did you do that course for?
I wanted to upskill. Basically, I guess I wanted to upskill and improve my resume, but I also wanted to learn new skills. I wanted to get myself back out of the comfort zone and grow as a human. And knowing that if I was to join the police force, those skills are always going to assist in life, let alone policing.
But it was part of your mind that those skills might further equip you for the role in policing.
Yeah, and life in general, to be honest.
Did you have in mind in policing that you would be well suited to a TRG or tactical response group?
Yes.
You applied to 4 police forces in Victoria, and Queensland. I'll come to that. And WA as well, is that right?
Potentially, I can't remember.
Okay. And also the Northern Territory. I think your evidence earlier was you didn't specifically have a preference.
Yeah.
Did the NT come up quicker than the others, or what made you...
What do you mean?
Why did you decide on the NT?
I think the NT was the last option. The application was honestly just the easiest to fill out at that time. But the NT was the last option.
All right. Obviously, there are some transferable skills, or I'm anticipating there are transferable skills from the army over into policing.
Correct.
Tell me if you agree with this. Things like, obviously, weapons training. You're nodding, I'm just saying that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yes.
Map reading? Or
yes. Yeah.
Orientation?
Yes, yeah.
Communication skills?
Yes.
Attention to detail?
Yes.
Working in a command structure?
Yes.
Anything else?
I'm sure there's a number of others, but those are good ones. Another one would be, I guess, conditioning to stress and working under arduous conditions.
And obviously your first aid skills as well, as demonstrated on the night of the 9th of November.
Yeah, they're better than average, I guess.
On the 30th of, so I'm just coming to your police applications. On the 30th of December 2015, you applied to join the Victorian Police Force. And we have these documents in the brief of evidence. So I'm going to ask that 3-51 be placed on the screen. Hopefully this will come up in front of you too, Mr.
You've got water there, haven't you, Mr. Rolfe?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. People who are Indigenous in the NT, it would be, I think it would be helpful for me if you could give me a few examples of how I could show respect to an Indigenous person that differs in a Western culture, and I can tell you if I was taught that or not.
Okay, we might come back to that, but just focus on Afghanistan.
Oh, you're talking about Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was completely, yeah.
So there's
I
no
thought
worries.
you were talking about the other one.
No, we'll come back to your training in the ENT.
Yeah, sorry.
Expounding on that from last time. But in Afghanistan, do you recall any question?
Try again.
I guess there was differences in how they ate food, the specifics, but again, that wasn't really my job. Like, my job wasn't to interact with the Afghans as much. I was to watch. While the mentors interacted.
I see.
If I was to interact with the Afghans, it wasn't I guess it wasn't a particular part of my role. It just happened.
Understood. So it may well be that you didn't in fact get any specific training in how to use your communication skills in a particular way.
Correct.
While you were on deployment in Afghanistan, I think we just got the dates right, 28th of August 2014, you made an application to complete the 2015 Special Forces selection process, is that right?
Yes.
That's the SAS in effect? Is that special force? Is that what we understand as Special Forces?
I think it encompasses the SAS and the commandos.
I'll just read these ones to you. The application was not supported by your questions on the application form.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's because, the reason given was because you were still on that, you received any other
I think so, yes.
infringement notice. How did you feel about that? Did you think it was unfair? Were you annoyed? Something else?
The only thing that was frustrating about that was I believe I received my 2-year formal warning 1 year after the incident, and for that whole 1 year I was basically on a formal warning. So it extended.
Was that part of your decision to leave the army though?
When we got back from Afghans, things happened with battalions.
Yeah, it's the very first pay. For a number of reasons, is that
Correct,
Is that
correct.
fair? And is that one of them then, that you could see that that career path wasn't going to be as smooth as you thought?
Yeah, correct. But I guess my passion for joining the SAS wasn't high enough to keep me in there and waiting for that thing. So it wasn't like the dream, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
If the passion was high enough, I would have stayed in and I would have tried out again, or I would have stayed in the military and rode that out, but the passion wasn't there.
Did you let go of that passion altogether, or did you keep it in your mind as something you might come back to?
I guess it was kept in my mind as something I might come back to, because I guess the option was open for me, as you'll see later. The option was left open for me to try again.
One of the questions, once the formal warning was over, I'll just start.
Yeah, but I get you're like obviously I'm not in the army in 2018.
You applied to join the Victorian. When you applied again.
Yes, yes, so it's a bit of a different situation. I guess I knew I had a good enough reputation that allowed me.
Have you ever received?
I didn't know the offer was given to me.
We'll come to 2018.
Yeah, but yeah. So I know it doesn't make sense for everyone else, but
Okay, so you've given pretty clear evidence. You left the army for a number of reasons. One of them is a sense of frustration that you were getting questions into the
correct.
special forces.
Or wasn't given the opportunity, I guess. Yeah, that was definitely not a
The online application.
given thing that if I tried out I'd get in. Definitely not.
Okay, between the 2nd of October and the 23rd of November 2015, you participated in a training course conducted by Trojan Securities International, and that was in the US.
Correct.
According to the materials, that course focuses on advanced tactical and firearms
The
familiarisation,
question that's been
close personal
it's
protection,
not on the online
risk
application
management,
form.
urban warfare, and driving in hostile environments.
Correct.
So I was desperately searching for it, but it's not
What
there.
did you do that course for?
The brief,
I wanted to
the
upskill.
brief itself,
Basically,
partial, not complete.
I guess I wanted to upskill and improve my resume, but I also wanted to learn new skills. I wanted to get myself back out of the comfort zone and grow as a human. And knowing that even still if I was to join the police force, those skills are always going to
I answered no. I don't recall.
assist in
obviously
life.
I
I
don't
learned
recall.
police.
But it was part of your mind that those
documents,
skills might equip you
the email says-
further. equip
yeah,
you
yeah,
further.
yeah.
It's some time ago, it's December 20.
Yeah, and life in general.
Did you have in mind in policing that you would be well suited to a TRG or police applications about whether you'd received any
Yes.
imprisonment notices or penalty notices? You applied to 4 police forces in
I don't honestly.
Victoria,
I don't
Queensland,
completing any of
and
these
WA as well.
recall applications. Potentially, I can't remember. Yes, I recall the
And also the Northern
Territory
Territory. I think your evidence
incident,
earlier was you didn't
instance
specifically.
of
I'll come
that
to
question.
I'll come to the.
Yeah, yeah.
Did the NT come up quicker than the others, or what made you?
What do you mean?
Why did you decide on the NT?
I think the NT was the last option. The application was honestly just
Have you ever received
the easiest
infringement notice or
to fill out at that time.
e.g. offensive behaviour? That was incorrect.
But the NT was the last option. That was incorrect. Yes.
And obviously there are some transferable skills, or I'm anticipating there are transferable skills from the army over into. You were charged with public
Correct.
nuisance. Tell me if you agree with this. Things like, obviously weapons training.
Yes, I
You're
believe so.
nodding, I'm just saying that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes.
Map reading. Or
Yes. Yeah.
orientation.
Yes, yeah.
Live stream communication skills,
Yes.
attention to detail,
It seems
Yes.
to be when we.
working in a command structure.
Yes.
But we can show.
Anything else?
Mr. Rolf documents.
I'm sure there's a number of others, but those are good ones. Another one would be, I guess, conditioning to stress, working under arduous conditions.
And obviously your first aid skills as well, as demonstrated on there. If it's nice screen, I'll show them to you.
Yeah, they're better than average, I guess.
On the 30th of, so I'm just coming to police applications. On the 30th of December 2015, you applied to join the Victorian Police Force. And we have these documents in the brief of evidence. I'm going to ask.
We think it's working fine.
One be placed on the screen. Okay. Hopefully this will come up in front of you too. 3-56.
You've got water there, haven't you, Mr. Rolf?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Let's see if that fixes. the other problem.
scroll down some pages,
Is this the
Pass.
Queensland Police Force application, sorry?
that's right.
Yeah.
So on the 4th of September 2011, in the state of Queensland, you were charged with public nuisance. The application is at the top of that. If you might scroll down, you'll
Yeah.
see where you see a record, your traffic record, and above that, a record that indicates that on the 4th of September 2011, you were charged with public nuisance, violent behaviour, and you paid a fine for that.
Yes.
And you knew about that at the time that you made an application to Victorian Police, is that right?
No, I'd completely forgotten about this.
You knew about it when you made an application to Queensland Police.
Same answer as before.
See, in these applications, do you recall, if you scroll to the very top of that page, you sign a statement when you apply to a police force like Queensland. I acknowledge that I have read this entire document and initialed each page. I declare the information that I've provided and any other attachments to be recorded accurately. I acknowledge that failing to disclose all relevant information and or providing false or misleading information may result in me being unsuccessful. So it was imperative, wasn't it, that you read that document carefully first, correct?
Correct.
And that you make every effort to answer accurately and truthfully, correct?
Correct.
You were filling in this application in January 2016. It was less than 5 years after you had been charged with public nuisance and violent behaviour.
Yes.
I suggest to you that you would not have forgotten.
I forgot.
Wasn't attention to detail one of the skills that was necessary for you as an army officer?
I was a soldier, not an officer.
Sorry, an army soldier.
Yes, it was. But if you want a memory expert on the thing, they might be better to answer this question. I just forgot.
Do you recall being asked at all about any disciplinary proceedings in the army?
I don't recall filling out these applications.
Have a look, if you don't mind, please, Mr. Rolfe, at page 2 under the subheading Integrity. There's a question about drugs. Have you ever used illegal drugs, regardless of whether you've been charged? And the answer is no. Was that correct as at that time?
Shouldn't I get one of these certificates for these answers?
Are you asking for one? There's been no request by your counsel.
Well, I do ask for one on his behalf. He's been asked a question about having ever used illegal drugs. That opens him up to, if the answer is yes, opens up to a risk of prosecution depending upon how vigorously this topic is explored, as I'm sure it will be, given the minutiae to which the learned friend has descended already. So, in that regard, I do make an application under section 38.
I'm not sure what offence, if any, could be the subject of a criminal prosecution at this stage.
Well, using illegal drugs, depending upon the quantity, the place, the time.
Your Honour's counsel assisting that there are ways to think that police responsibilities and they are, notwithstanding limitations of students in the circumstances, a certificate should be offered.
In relation,
Yes, that's what's
Can
being
we-
sought.
does it cover the topic of any usage of illegal drugs? Questions and answers in relation?
It should, Your Honour, because
Yes. All right, given that it could give rise to criminal proceedings, I will grant a certificate.
Can I get a certificate for the stat deck
Sorry, Your
offence
Honour's
as well?
offering the certificate, my client accepts it,
Thank you.
and my client will now answer the questions in relation to illegal drugs.
I think that the concern that Mr. Rolfe might have is that there are potentially different answers
Correct.
in relation to this application. And so I think it's appropriate that the certificate be fashioned in such a way that it captures answers in relation to Mr. Rolfe's view about this application. So, for example, it was to be suggested that there was something inaccurate, this one is to also cover those types of answers.
I agree.
Your Honour, as this is the first occasion on which this particular issue has arisen, it might be helpful to be scrupulous about the process under Section 38,
Yes.
which is under 38(1)(a). If a witness declines to answer a question on the ground that his answer will incriminate or tend to incriminate him, that's happened so far, then it needs to appear to you expedient for the purposes of justice that the person be compelled to answer the question. Then you can tell the person what the consequences are and issue a certificate.
Yes.
So that intermediate step hasn't been attended to so far. It might be useful just in terms of setting a precedent for the various other matters that may arise for that process to be undertaken.
Yes. Does anyone wish to make any submissions on the expediency or otherwise for the purposes of justice
Can
that
I just
Mr. Rolfe be compelled?
very quickly, this is a certificate that's been considered prospectively in relation to the answer to this particular question. The witness has already answered a number of questions about a previous form where he said he had no memory of having been convicted of a criminal offence in Queensland. There was no objection taken for those questions and answers, and they should not be covered by a certificate.
Yes. We're dealing with the matters as the objection arises, and that was very clear at the beginning of these proceedings. But in relation to this objection, firstly dealing with use of illegal drugs.
Your Honour, given that there'll be a number of these objections, and I think it's hoped by all parties that we can deal with general principles once.
Yes.
And then move on with some efficiency.
That is certainly the hope that I have, Your Honour. This is what I addressed originally when I rose to my feet earlier on.
What I might do, Your Honour, is address you on the provision, considerations relevant to whether or not it's expedient in the administration of justice that Mr. Rolfe be compelled, and then briefly speak on each of the types of questions. As Dr. Freckleton has rightly observed, there must be an objection to a question that's occurred. Your Honour must then determine whether there are reasonable grounds for the objection, and I take it that Your Honour, with everyone's consent, has determined there be such grounds. Your Honour must then...
And this, at the moment, we're talking specifically about any use of illegal drugs.
Yes, Your Honour.
Yes.
Your Honour must then be satisfied that it's expedient in the interests of justice to compel Mr. Rolfe to answer the questions. Now, Mr. Rolfe, in his submissions of approximately 2 weeks ago, observes that that's an ordinary interests of justice test. It's multifactorial. We wholly accept that. Having taken an objection to the question, we're all agreed, as I understand it, that Your Honour has the power to determine the objection in relation to the general topic to which it relates, and there is textual support for that, Your Honour, in section 38 sub 2 of the Act. As to the relevant considerations, Your Honour, a number of them are set out in Mr. Rolfe's written submissions, and with respect, counsel assisting adopts them. Your Honour must recognise that the privilege against self-incrimination is a long-standing common law privilege. Your Honour must recognise that although the direct immunity certificate prohibits the use of evidence in proceedings, there could be some derivative use of the evidence, for example, in an investigation. Your Honour must consider the seriousness of the consequences for Mr. Rolfe. In this case, I respectfully submit that they're likely to be relatively minor, given the age and nature of the offences. On the other hand, Your Honour must take into account that Parliament has seen fit to abrogate the privilege against self-incrimination and has done so for the express purpose of ensuring that coronial inquests could get to the truth and would not be frustrated in their death prevention function by objections to questions. Your Honour must, of course, then consider whether the evidence is relevant to a fact and issue in the proceedings and its appropriate value. Having no noted all of those matters and noted that it's not contended, I think, that it isn't expedient in the administration of justice to compel Mr. Rolfe to answer the question. In my respectful submission, if any is very dated, it is incredibly minor. Mr. Rolfe has...
If any, I don't know.
That's right. Mr. Rolfe has the advantage of the direct immunity certificate, and in those circumstances it's expedient in the administration of justice to grant the certificate. In my respectful submission, the same goes for offences that might tend to demonstrate some kind of criminal dishonesty, an offence, for example, of making a false declaration. In our respectful submission, there are reasonable grounds to uphold the objection, to make the objection on that basis. But for similar reasons, the date and seriousness of the so-called offence and the fact that there's a direct immunity certificate render it expedient in the administration of justice to inform Mr. Rolfe rather than granting the certificate.
Yes. Does anyone wish to say anything further?
So, Your Honour, can I add to that submission?
Sure.
Your Honour, as I read section 38, the objection is taken to a question, but the certificate relates to further questions, plural. I rely upon subsection 1 talks about a question. Subsection 2 talks about refusal to answer questions, plural, indicating that the certificate is meant to be given at the outset of the first question and to cover all subsequent questions.
On that topic?
On that topic.
Yes.
And I apply for a certificate in relation to the topic of illegal drug use.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions there relating thereto, and on the topic of making wrong answers in forms, in the sense that false statements, for which there are various laws around Australia that relate to making false statements, either on oath or just generally. I ask for a certificate in relation to those matters as well.
For any subsequent evidence on
Yes.
these topics?
Yes.
Yes. Does anyone wish to be heard further?
I'm sorry, Your Honour.
I'm sorry, I was just asking
do
if anyone else wished to be
I
heard
do.
further. Thank you for those helpful submissions. In my view, it is expedient for the purposes of justice that Mr. Rolfe be compelled to answer questions on the two topics that have been identified, namely any illegal drug use or any questions on the topic regarding false statements made in forms, and I provide a Section 38 certificate in relation to all questions asked on those topics.
Mr. Rolfe, I think you answered yes when I asked you this question before, but I'll withdraw that. Let me go back to where we started. In relation to this form, one of the questions under the subheading integrity was whether or not you had ever used illegal drugs. Do you see that?
Yes.
Your answer then was no. Was that correct at that time?
No, it wasn't.
So that was a lie, wasn't it?
Yes, that was.
Why did you lie on that form?
Basically to give me the best chances of getting into the army at that time.
Sorry, into the police force? You mean?
Oh, is this the police?
Yes.
Yes, the police.
Is it the same case then when you applied to the army?
I can't recall that.
On the 4th of September 20th.
Just wait for a moment.
Sure. Well, before I move on from that, so the question was, have you ever used illegal drugs, regardless of whether or not you'd been charged? You answered no. You've acknowledged that that was not a truthful answer. What illegal drugs had you used up until that time?
Well, I think that, is this necessary in relation to the ultimate aim of this inquest? I mean, do we get into which ones?
It goes,
when?
it goes, in my view, Mr. Abbott, to the assessment of suitability and the like, and subsequent impact on behaviour.
What, that he might have smoked a bit of marijuana when he was a teenager?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to say. So
Well,
it
there's
might
no
be marijuana as a teenager. I don't know.
But let's assume that is the answer. What possible relevance could that have?
Your Honour, I press the question. It goes to whether or not, it actually might assist my friend's client, if he wasn't so defensive in these circumstances, to allow Mr. Rolfe the opportunity to explain why he lied on the form. That might be
He really
of assistance rather than leaving it to us to speculate what illegal drugs. And or it may well be relevant to the issues that arise in the Northern Territory Police Force. Whereas my friend would know from reading the brief of evidence in preparation for today, there are issues of illegal drug use while Mr. Rolfe was a serving officer with the Northern Territory Police Force.
Well, I do want to make the point that claim can only refer to, I assume, the reference to brownies in the text messages.
Well, we'll have that no doubt clarified
And I'll
from
be-
Mr. Rolfe during the course of his evidence.
But-
We might have views about what it might be referring to, but there might be other things in the text messages relevant to these sorts of issues that Mr. Rolfe will explain to us. I don't know.
Well,
But it's certainly raised in the evidence as a question that is relevant to these proceedings in relation to illegal drug use whilst a serving police officer. And in my view, it is relevant to understand where that commenced and how that played into the various applications that were made to various police forces
Your Honour,
and how it was managed.
I submit it's about as relevant as asking anyone at the bar table if they ever used illegal drugs.
Mr. Rolfe, would you like the question again?
No, I did smoke a bit of marijuana as a teenager.
Anything else?
I think I did some MDMA while I was in the army.
Anything else?
Yeah, but marijuana every now and then.
Illegal steroids? At
Never.
any time prior to that?
Never.
So it's marijuana and MDMA.
Yeah, I believe so.
On the 4th of September 2011, in the state of Queensland, you were charged with public nuisance, violent behaviour, and I took you to that fine earlier.
Yes.
You see that there, don't you? The details that we have on this document reveal the date of the offence.
I don't have a document in front of me, sorry.
Sorry, I'll just give it back to you. If you'll accept it from me,
Yeah, I do.
if you don't mind. And my learned friends will correct me. It's on that same 3-58 for their benefit. The offence actual date is listed as the 4th of September 2011. The description is public nuisance, violent behaviour, and the result date is the 21st of September 2011 with a fine of $300. Did you go to court for that incident?
No, I did. No.
The actual offence was committed in September 2011. Do you recall the details of the offence?
Yes.
What happened?
A fellow soldier was being assaulted by a number of men in Townsville. I believe there's a Strand area, which is a few hundred metres away from the, can't remember the street name, maybe the main street with the pubs in it where I was. But a fellow soldier was being assaulted on the Strand by a group of males. One of his friends ran towards the bar areas where I was and located me and informed me that this soldier was being assaulted by a group of men and he needed help. He ran off to get more help because the group was quite large. I ran down to the Strand, saw the assault occurring. I the soldier that was being assaulted was on the ground unconscious. I attempted to assist, and we had a fight, me and the group, and it was I guess I was losing that fight, and then I started winning that fight. Unfortunately, when the police arrived, and it looked like I was very much so winning that fight, so I got arrested on that time. The soldier who was being assaulted was, I believe, placed in a coma in hospital, and he lost sight in one eye. I believe his brain was being swollen, and he ended up being medically discharged from the army due to that assault.
It sounds like a pretty memorable event, Mr. Roll.
Not compared to the other events that have occurred in my life, no.
Well, at that stage, it was January 2016 or thereabouts that you applied to the police force.
Correct.
It was one of the first, only the second police force you applied to, or was WA in between there?
I can't recall.
You had clearly read the form that said that you needed to make sure that you were full and frank in your disclosures.
Yes.
The incident you're talking about, is that the one that happened near the Mad Cow Tavern?
Oh. The Strand, I was near the Mad Cow Tavern. No, that's a different one. I believe the one you're talking about is I'm noted as a witness. Naja, in their report, stated that I had some more offending to do with that, but I was a witness in that.
Okay. You spoke to police in relation to that matter, did you?
I gave my name as a witness.
You must have, do I take from your answer so far, at the very least read that application very carefully, correct?
Are we talking about the police application?
Yes, the Queensland police application.
I may not have read it very carefully, no.
That's not a serious answer, is it, Mr. Roll? You had attention to detail as a result of your work in the army. You're a clever young bloke. You're applying to be a law officer. You must have read the application form properly before you signed it.
I object to the accusatory tone of this cross-examination. The learned friend is counsel assisting, not counsel for the prosecution. Yet she sounds like counsel for the prosecution in the way in which she directs her questions, her manner of speaking, and her attitude to my client. My client is here to give evidence to assist the inquiry. The learned friend is here to prosecute him, obviously.
I absolutely object to the suggestion, and it misunderstands the question, but it's 2024. There are lady barristers. My learned friend's going to have to get used to that. I am entitled to ask questions in exactly the same manner as any other counsel assisting would ask them, which is obviously fairly, but also with a degree of inflection in my voice. I'm sorry if that upsets my learned friend, but it is quite clear that the questions I'm asking are not in an objectionable tone.
I see nothing objectionable in the tone that's being used, and the questions are being put clearly and fairly, and I don't think that the way the questions are being asked would have any impact whatsoever on Mr. Rolfe or his ability to hear, understand and answer the questions. So I'm going to allow the questions.
Could you answer that question, please, Mr. Rolfe?
I don't know, I forgot what it was, but I guess I'm going to say my personal admin is not my strong suit.
Can you have a look at the document, please? It's at 3-56.
Yeah, I see where to look at now.
If you scroll down to that second page under the subheading integrity, you see if you answered yes to any of the following questions, you must provide details. And do you see there 2.6 subheading court, 2.6.1, have you ever been to court in any state or country? And examples are given are unregistered, unlicensed, drink driving, etc. Your answer is no. Was that answer truthful at that time and correct?
I can't recall. I don't think I've been to court as in those regards,
What about going to court in any regard?
like as a witness.
Well, the question is, have you ever been to court in any state or country, including unregistered, unlicensed, etc.?
I believe at that point I may have been to court as a witness, and again, I can't remember filling out this application. I may have assumed that that meant as an offender or a defendant,
All right. The next question.
but I can't remember it, filling out that answer.
Next question, 2.6.2. Have you ever been spoken to, arrested, investigated, interviewed, or questioned by police as an adult, even if no conviction recorded? It couldn't be broader, could it, as a question in terms of inviting the applicant to explain any interaction? I haven't finished my question,
This
Mr.
is two
Rabbit.
questions.
I haven't finished my question, Mr.
Well,
Rabbit.
there's two of them.
I'm going to allow the question. If there's an objection at the end of it, I'll hear it.
There we are.
But we have an intelligent young man who will be able to listen to the question, I assume. If he has a difficulty with the manner in which the question's asked and requires clarification, I'm sure he'll ask for it.
I'm sure he will too.
Mr. Rolfe, you heard that. Sometimes there are some propositions, more than one, put in a question. If that causes you any difficulty, please let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
Mr. Rock, I'll ask you that one again. It's 2.6.2. Have you ever been spoken to, arrested, investigated, interviewed, or questioned by police as an adult? That's what the question reads. Can you see it there?
Yes,
Do you agree with me that it is very broad?
it is.
And it is obviously, isn't it, designed to encourage an applicant to be forthcoming about any interaction they might have had with the police, regardless of whether it ends up in a charge.
Yes.
Outside of the incident that I took you to, the $300 fine you got for public nuisance and violent behaviour, was there any other incident where you had been spoken to, arrested, investigated, interviewed or questioned by police as an adult?
Well, now that you remind me of the other one where I was a witness, yes, but again, that was so minor that I'd forgotten about that.
Could you be shown, please, 3-58? Just take a moment to read that to yourself.
Yeah.
The first incident I referred to you about where you were fined was the 4th of September 2011. This incident was the 23rd of December 2011. So those following can understand. It reads that at 3:45 hours on the 23rd of December 2011, so that's some couple of months after the first one, police responded to a male person who was unconscious on Flinders Street East after being assaulted. It's alleged the male was pushed with some force, resulting in him falling backwards and hitting his head. The male was unconscious for a matter of minutes. The offender, with another male, has decamped in taxi number 21 from the nightclub precinct. A particular vehicle has intercepted this car outside the Lavara barracks, confirming the two male occupants' identity. Was that somewhere where you were living, those barracks?
Yes.
You were nominated as one of the offenders there, being the offender was Mr. Shawcross, suspect, and Mr. Rolfe, both members of the ADF. The injured...
You said I was just nominated as one of the offenders, and it says the being Shawcross in brackets suspect and Rolfe, nothing. I was not nominated as one of the offenders.
Okay, I'll read that again. The offender with another male has decamped
There we go.
after someone was pushed with force, resulting in falling backwards and hitting his head. The male was unconscious for a matter of minutes. Then the police intercepted a vehicle outside the barracks, this being Shawcross suspect and Rolf, both members of the ADF. The injured male had sustained a large laceration to the back of his head and appeared to be intoxicated. Goes on to note that the police took photos of Shawcross and Rolf and scanned it into street check. They contacted the Townsville Hospital Emergency Department and spoke to staff in relation to the injuries. The police would make an application to obtain the City Council CCTV footage. Both Shawcross and Rolf have been released without charge until police make further inquiries regarding the event. Police clearly spoke to you in relation to that event.
Yes.
They in fact photographed you in relation to the event.
I can't recall them taking a photo of me, no.
Well, do you see the notation there that they took photographs of yourself and Shawcross that were then scanned into the street check?
I do, but I don't recall that.
That event itself, you understood, didn't you, that a male had been knocked unconscious after falling backwards and hitting his head?
No, I was a witness. Do you want to know what happened?
If you could answer my questions and then I'll give you every opportunity to talk about it.
Okay, so the answer to that question was no.
When police spoke to you about it, were you under arrest at that time?
Well, I object. The document clearly shows that he was a suspect. You haven't got the second page where it says Rolf suspect, and not Rolf witness,
I
rather.
think Rolf witness.
So he's not a suspect. The document 358A says he's a witness, not a suspect.
I'm not looking at 358, Mr. Abbott. 358. I'll come to 358A.
Well, you can't.
They're different events, Mr. Abbott.
I object.
358A is the 3rd of the 9th, 2011.
Well,
The other event is December 2011. I'll speak up if you need me to.
I believe I have seen further documentation of this incident in the brief that does specifically mention that I'm a witness.
Okay. You're ably represented by King's Counsel and a solicitor who can assist you with that. And I'll be very happy to be pointed out any documentation that I haven't taken to you so that you can fairly respond.
Yeah.
So you acknowledge that police spoke to you about this incident, is that right?
Yes.
And there were two separate incidents, weren't there? There was one on the 4th of September 2011, and then there was this incident on the 23rd of December 2011. That's correct?
Yeah, two separate incidents.
Were there any more incidents where you were spoken to by police about?
I can't recall.
Can I go back to the form that you were asked to fill out? Have you ever been spoken to, arrested, investigated, interviewed or questioned by police as an adult? And the answer there is no. That answer was not correct, was it?
Yeah, correct. I couldn't remember, yes.
I'm suggesting to you, Mr. Rolfe, and giving you an opportunity to respond, you deliberately didn't disclose that you had been spoken to by police about that incident.
No, that's not correct.
The next question is, have you ever been spoken to, arrested, interviewed, cautioned or charged by police as a juvenile? And your answer is no. That answer was not correct, was it?
As a juvenile?
Sorry, I withdraw that. As an adult, have you ever been spoken to, arrested, investigated? Okay. Under the same question, another answer which would have made it accurate to say yes is the fact that you had been charged with the public nuisance and violent offence matter.
Look, I wasn't aware. I got a ticket. I wasn't aware that meant at that time you'd been charged. But again, if getting a ticket is being charged, then yes, I had been charged. But again, I couldn't recall it when I filled out this application.
You described two events in 2011 in Queensland that appear to be memorable events for you as a young officer, as a young man, is that right?
They're memorable if you spend your life sitting behind a desk, but for me in my life, no, it wasn't. They weren't particularly memorable.
The fine that you paid for was not just for public nuisance, it was for public nuisance violent behaviour.
Correct.
Did you take that seriously as a young man getting a fine for violent behaviour?
I ended up getting taken in the front of my platoon and having my hand shaken by the Sarge for defending this guy's life. I got taken to the RSM of the battalion and got thanked for saving this lad's life. And I got asked to go spend time with him in the hospital when he woke up from his coma to let him know that he wasn't alone when this occurred. So I did not take that fine particularly seriously.
Okay, so as long as it was okay in terms of you and the army and those that you respected there, it didn't trouble you that you had a fine, a conviction on your record for violent behaviour?
No, the police shook my hand as well. Said I did a good job once I found out exactly what had occurred.
Why did you pay the fine and admit the offence if you thought you'd done such a good job defending that?
Again, as I said, personal admin's not my strong suit, and I'm not going to spend the $300 is easier to me than appeal the fine. I've got information now in the lead up to all this, since this has come out from Queensland Police, saying that I could still appeal that fine if I wanted to, and I cannot be bothered.
Have you got that documentation with you?
No, I have not.
Can you produce that documentation if you're asked to?
It's a phone call from a Queensland Police member.
Who did you speak to in Queensland Police?
I can't recall the name. Lots of people have reached out to me over the last few years. But if you look at the, I guess all you'd have to do is look at the details for appealing a fine in Queensland Police.
Well, what we have got is an email that was sent to you by Queensland Police, which is the last page of the document at 3-56. It's from Recruiting and Integrity, sent to you on the 7th of March 2016. Mr. Rolfe, your Recruit EOI expression of interest form completed and signed by you on the 1st of February 2016 has been vetted for integrity. It's imperative that all potential police applicants thoroughly read and understand the signed statement on the EOI, particularly the following statement. I acknowledge that failing to disclose all relevant information and or providing false or misleading information may result in me being unsuccessful. We have integrity issues for traffic, criminal and other matters. The guidelines generally have minimum exclusion and maximum exclusion periods. The guidelines apply to everyone with no exception. The following integrity issues have been identified pertaining to yourself. Public nuisance, violent behaviour, minimum exclusion of 2 years, maximum exclusion of 15 years. You failed to disclose that offence and you were told that you're excluded for 10-year periods and until the 1st of February 2026 before submitting a new application. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you made no attempt then to dispute the fine, even though you had an unlimited opportunity to do so?
No, I did not. That was in 2016. Obviously, this wasn't made public, all this until after I was arrested, so that's when the conversation occurred.
But this is an email you received.
Can I just interrupt? Learned Friend's questions, a few questions ago, included the inference, in fact, the statement that he had been convicted. This document appears to indicate that he's never been convicted. Now, if my learned friend has information that he was convicted, as distinct from just receiving a fine, then I'd like to see it. But I come to this new, and I'm therefore asking for assistance. If there is evidence of any conviction, I'd like to see it, because her question stated as though he was convicted.
Do you press that part of the question?
No, it's about being found guilty of that offence, more accurately putting it.
Thank you. Well, you withdraw the question insofar as it contained the word conviction, because he hasn't been convicted.
Yes, it's been reflected to a found guilty, not a conviction.
Thank you.
And the question that I was asking you about in that regard, Mr. Rolfe, was have you ever been spoken to, arrested, investigated, interviewed or questioned by police as an adult, even if no conviction recorded? You answered no to that, correct?
Yes.
Did you, is it your evidence that you didn't remember what had happened in 2011 when you received the fine or when you were spoken to police, or that you didn't think it fit with the question that you were asked?
No, I didn't remember. I was obviously applying to the Queensland Police where I had been fined. I wasn't going to be able to hide that from them. It was just an issue of memory.
On the 7th of March 2016, you were told by the integrity section of Queensland Police that you had failed the integrity part because you hadn't disclosed that fine.
Yes.
And you did not appeal that decision, did you?
No.
And you didn't try to appeal the original fine, even though you tell the court now that you had, there was no time restriction.
Apparently. This was after but what I'm talking about there, that information came years and years after this email. But no, I didn't appeal this, and no, I didn't appeal the fine at that point.
Were you asked any questions in your Queensland application about whether or not you had disciplinary offences in the army?
I can't recall.
Mr. Roth, we're about to have the morning tea break, but I just want to give you this opportunity. You were about 24 years old, I think we established at the time that you were applying to police forces.
Yes.
The court appreciates that you were young, and young men and women sometimes make mistakes. I want to suggest to you that in the same way that you didn't disclose the drug offending, you didn't disclose the earlier offending because you didn't regard it as a big deal.
No, ma'am, Your Honour, I'm happy to own up when I make a mistake or an error, such as the drugs, but if I didn't remember, I didn't remember, and there's no amount of asking me the same questions on repeat that's going to change my answer.
All right, well, after the break, we'll come to your application to the Northern Territory Police Force.
We'll take the morning tea adjournment, 15 minutes.
The court stands temporarily adjourned.
No, we're going to go to a print shop. We're going to collate all the documents.
For my part, I would like to take part.
You might feel free to interrupt me, but I suspect you.
I know, please, I'm just saying.
From me, at least. I don't know whether.
Yeah, all you
Yeah.
Fly this morning. I know you here last night, right?
I was, yeah.
Actually, we might be on.
You can turn it off now.
You have to. No.
Where can you get one? It's a good question.
What's that?
You might cup of coffee. What's good coffee?
All stand. Coronial courts now resumed. Please be seated.
Mr. Rolfe, on the 2nd of February 2016, you applied to the Northern Territory Police Force, correct?
I can't recall the dates,
All right.
but
Would
I'll
you-
accept it.
Happy to take it from me unless I'm corrected.
Yes.
Again, can I suggest to you that you read your application carefully before you filled it out?
Well, I can't say that I did.
And you say that's because admin is not your strong suit, is that right?
Say personal admin, yes.
Am I right that you've just been a clerk in a law firm in Canberra?
Yeah, I did some work there, clerk work, etc.
You would have understood from that work how important attention to detail is in legal documents, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And you understood that this was a legal document, a statutory declaration in effect.
Yes.
Page 1 of the application, it's at 350A for my friends, says that you need to make a full disclosure. Failure to disclose information may result in the application not being processed or, once appointed, the termination of your appointment. Very similar to the other forces. You would have read that prior to filling out the form.
Yes.
And one of the questions clearly asks you about a prior criminal history, doesn't it?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, I'll ask you to be handed. It's 3-50A. It's also at 3-4. Just have a look at that first page if you don't mind, Mr. Rolfe, and you'll notice the date there's the one I gave you, the 2nd of February 2016.
Yes.
All right, and you see on the front page that warning in relation to reading all questions and instructions carefully.
Yes.
Can I suggest to you that you did do that? That is, that you did understand and you did read that document carefully before you signed it. Do you agree with that?
Okay, I can't recall when I filled out this document.
If you scroll down the document, if you don't mind, there's a page, it's got 45 on the bottom of the document. It says traffic, criminal and other offences.
Yes.
You must make full disclosure, it says, which includes all criminal and civil proceedings, all spent convictions, all traffic offences, including traffic tickets and court appearances, and all juvenile offences. So again, it's worded broadly to encourage disclosure. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And the first question under that box is, have you ever been convicted of any offence, criminal, civil, military or other? And you mark the box no.
Yes.
Marking the box no was that was an incorrect answer to that question, wasn't it?
That's incorrect, yes.
Because we've already established, haven't we, that in May 2012 you had a military offence that you were convicted of and given a formal warning for. Correct?
Yes.
And you remembered that, didn't you, at the time that you filled out this offence? This form?
I can't recall filling out this form or reading the questions properly. That might have been a mistake.
It might have been a mistake. It might have been a deliberate decision not to disclose it at that time.
No, I believe it would have been a mistake. You can see that when I became aware that I'd made a mistake in regard to the fine, I called the NT police up and let them know about that.
Yeah. But when you became aware, I would draw that, when you were interviewed for the Northern Territory, you didn't ever disclose the military disciplinary offence, did you?
Yeah, because again, it mustn't have come up, or I mustn't have realised I'd made a mistake on this.
So that was just an innocent error, is that right?
Correct.
Isn't it the case that you thought that disclosing it might adversely affect your application?
No, in regard to the drugs, yes, that's correct.
What about in relation to the military offence?
I didn't even come up in my head. I don't know if I read the question properly, or that was not my intent to make that error.
Okay, might have just slipped your mind, is that right?
Correct.
The next question, have you ever been arrested, summoned or charged to appear before any court?
Sorry, before the learner moves on to that, again she used the word conviction. I don't think we've established that he was ever convicted of any military offence. He was certainly charged with it, but whether it was a conviction.
I can show my learned friend that document. He was in fact convicted of a military offence. I think that's right, isn't it, Mr. Roll? Would you like to
Did you just read question 1 again? Sorry.
Sure. Question
No.
1.
Is that what you were reading out just then? Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I was convicted in the military. Yeah.
You were?
Yeah.
Thank
But sorry, I thought you were reading question 2 on this grey box.
I was, but
Yeah, I got mixed
your
up.
barrister's,
Yeah.
your senior counsel's objection was in relation to the first question I asked you.
Yeah, understood.
And I think you've helpfully clarified it for us. You accept that you were convicted of a military offence.
Yes.
And you accept that the answer you gave then was not an accurate one.
Yeah, it was a mistake, yes.
The second question is, have you ever been arrested, summoned or charged to appear before any court, tribunal or authority in relation or in connection with any, in capital letters, criminal, civil, military or other offences or incident? And you write no. Was that correct?
No, that's not correct. Exact same situation as the Queensland application before.
It's just another mistake.
No, that one, that's in regard to the arrest and stuff in Townsville. I'd forgotten about that until Queensland sent me that email.
Because the third question covers not just when you're charged to appear, etc. It says, have you ever been interviewed, questioned or investigated in connection with any criminal, civil, military or other offence or incident by any police officer, department or authority?
Yeah.
And you had in fact been interviewed, hadn't you?
Correct.
But you answered no.
Correct.
So that's the third error there, is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall on this form, if you scroll up you can see it, there's a question, police service history. Have you ever previously applied to join the Northern Territory Police Force? No. Have you ever previously applied to join any other police service? The box yes is crossed out and you've ticked no, correct?
Yes.
But in fact you had applied to join another police force service by that time, hadn't you?
Yeah, I believe so. With the dates, yeah.
Because you fill this out on the 2nd of February. You applied to Victoria on the 30th of December 2015 and you applied to Queensland on the 1st of February 2016. Correct?
Correct.
So the correct answer there was yes. And then if yes, which services have you applied to? And you should have listed the details there of Victoria and Queensland, correct?
Correct.
So can I suggest to you that was a deliberate decision not to inform the Northern Territory Police that you'd applied for those earlier police services?
No, incorrect. Just a mistake.
Mr. Rolfe, I want to give you a chance to really think about these questions and answer them in a way that does you credit. If that's...
I'm not trying to answer these questions in a way that does me credit. I'm trying to answer these questions truthfully.
All right. Well, I don't want to insult your intelligence. So you've got an application in Victoria on the 30th of December 2015, an application in Queensland on the 1st of February 2016. You applied to this force on the 2nd of February 2016, and the question says, have you ever previously applied to join any other police forces? And you answer no, even where it's The question below is, if yes, which services have you applied to? So you gave false information on this document, yeah?
Yeah, accidentally.
And I suggest to you that you did that deliberately because you thought it would, for some reason, it would improve your chances of getting into the interview.
It's not correct.
So that's the fourth error though, isn't it, that we've established on this document?
Yes.
For a young man who was trained in attention to detail, that is a very clumsy way of filling out that form, can I suggest to you?
Correct. I agree.
But your evidence is that was entirely accidental, correct?
Yes.
Were you asked in this form whether or not you had ever taken any illicit drugs?
I'm not sure. I don't remember filling this form out.
Do you recall being asked in your interview whether or not you had ever used any illicit drugs?
No, I don't recall.
I take it if you had been asked, your answer would have been the same as you gave in Victoria, that is, you would not have disclosed your illicit drug use.
Well, I object. This is a possibility upon a possibility.
Yes, I won't allow that question.
Mr. Rolfe, I suggest to you, for the same reason you gave about not disclosing the drug use in the Queensland application, you did not disclose any form of military offence or been spoken to by police in any other matters, or the fine for public nuisance or violent behaviour, or the other applications to other forces. That is, you wanted to improve your prospects and you didn't think it was a big deal to lie.
Oh, no, I don't agree with that. And I also did disclose, when I was made aware of it, of the Queensland incident.
Well, let's come to that. On the 28th of February 2016, you undertook psychological testing with the Australian Institute of Forensic Psychologists. Do you recall that?
No, I don't.
Do you recall psychological testing generally to get into any police force?
Yes.
Pretty standard, isn't it? That wouldn't have
If
surprised
that's
you.
the big multiple choice question, do you know if that's it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's
yeah,
right.
Yes.
Okay. And you would have had to do psychological testing to get into the army as well, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So, do you ever get any feedback from the Northern Territory Police about the profile that you fill out?
I'm not sure if I get feedback.
Well, can I tell you that the feedback was that it was an overwhelmingly positive application from you. Did you do your best to answer the questions honestly in the psychological profile?
I believe so.
You engaged with that process fully?
Yeah, I believe so.
And do you say that at no time after your interview did you get any feedback from the Northern Territory Police Force about the positives or any caveats that were in that psychological profile?
I can't recall if I did or not.
It's in our brief of evidence, so I want to give you an opportunity to comment on it. The caveat that is there, one of them is this: after making a mistake, Zachary is less likely than many others to accept responsibility. He may brush off the significance of the error, seek to minimise his own role, or to blame others. Is that fair?
Well, I object that this is an impossible question. He's being asked to comment on someone else's opinion. What possible relevance does that have to this inquiry?
Well, he's given an explanation and now he's being asked a follow-up question on that explanation to challenge it.
Well, with respect, Your Honour, he's not being asked that. He's being asked to comment on someone else's opinion as to whether or not he regards that opinion as fair or not. Now, this is a coronial inquiry into a death. What possible relevance does his view about whether what someone else commented on him in a report which was confidential to them, what possible relevance does that have to the terms of your inquiry?
I'll draw the question. I'll ask it differently. It's out of fairness to Mr. Rolfe, so that he has an opportunity to comment. Mr. Rolfe, do you think that after making a mistake you are less likely than many others to accept responsibility?
No.
Do you think you might brush off the significance of the error?
No.
Do you think you might minimise your role in a matter or blame other people?
No.
What do you think in relation to your levels of aggression? Do you think it's fair to say that there were times in the Northern Territory Police Force where you acted with frank aggression rather than firm assertiveness?
No.
Think back to your time in the Northern Territory. Do you think that there were occasions where you resented authority figures in that structured organisation?
Yes.
You resented the brass, effectively, with the Northern Territory Police?
That would be in a individual sense. If someone who was a member of the brass had done something that I deemed an error, then yeah, but not for just the fact that they are the brass or they are authority.
All right, but if you deemed your opinion to be more valuable than theirs, or that they had, I think I'll use your terms, if you deemed them to be in error and you not to be, then you might be contemptuous of them in those circumstances.
If I deemed them to be worthy of contempt, then I would feel contempt towards them, yes.
And you would resent them then in their position?
I'm not, no. If you read me the definition of resent, I need to, we can get into the details.
All right, well, let's just let you use your words. I think you just said that if you thought in effect that they were wrong and you were right, you might be contemptuous of them. Is that fair?
Yeah, same as anyone else, regardless of rank.
And you would then think that there was a better way to do something rather than the way they were telling you?
If there was a better way to do something than the way they were telling me, generally I would bring that up with them, yes.
All right, you'd be happy to follow your way rather than theirs if you thought it was the better way?
Be happy to inform them of my opinion of what a better way would be.
And if you were told to do it anyway, that is to obey the rules, even if you thought they weren't the right ones, would you resent the authority structure?
Or if it was unsafe or unlawful, I wouldn't obey the rule, obey the command.
Okay. If it was unsafe or unlawful, then you wouldn't obey the rule or command? Correct?
Yes.
If it was safe and lawful, then you would obey the rule or command? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
On the 7th of March 2016, the Queensland Police Force told you that you were excluded from reapplying for 10 years. I showed you that document earlier.
Yes.
You must have been very disappointed about that.
Oh, no, it was fair. I failed to disclose. I forgot about that incident.
Were you stressed or nervous about the fact that you failed to disclose?
I can't recall how I felt on the day.
You didn't try to challenge it in any way, we've established that.
Correct.
The next week or so, or 9 days later, after the knockback from Queensland Police, you were interviewed by Northern Territory Police.
I accept that. I don't know the dates.
You must have been worried when you were interviewed by Northern Territory Police that they would discover your failure to disclose the public nuisance or public violence affairs.
I don't think I was worried. I can't recall how I felt. I think I told them about it.
When you told Northern Territory recruiters about the Queensland charge, you told them a story that you had intervened to protect your mate, what you just told us before the break.
Correct.
You didn't ever tell them about another occasion when you were interviewed or asked questions by police?
I did not tell them about a situation where I was a witness to something else happening, no.
Did they ask you at all why you hadn't disclosed that offence the first time round?
I can't recall.
In this,
I think at the time, I remember talking about it, I told them about the event and I believe Sachin Sharma was there and I believe he laughed and said, "You'll fit in here. You'll fit in here."
Why did he say that?
You'll have to ask him.
All right. So you told him the story that in effect you'd been charged with an offence when you'd been the one defending the other soldier who was involved.
Yes.
You'd run to their aid and you'd been effectively lionised for that afterwards and thanked for your work.
I don't know what lionised
All right,
means.
I'll ask it differently. You told Sachin Sharma and the others in the interview that even though you'd been charged with a criminal offence and you accepted the fine and paid it, in fact the real story was that you'd gone to the aid of one of your mates in the army.
Correct, but I wouldn't have used the word charged because I wasn't aware of that. I would have used the word got a fine.
Got a fine, minimised, what was it?
Well, I didn't realise getting a fine was the same thing as being charged at that time.
Well, the fine that you got wasn't just any old fine, was it? It was public nuisance, violent behaviour. That's what-
$300. The fine was $300.
For the,
for the offence of public nuisance and violent behaviour. Your King's Counsel is scoffing at that.
Yes.
I'm not scoffing. I'm not scoffing at it. I'm not scoffing at it. It was $300. The record speaks for itself.
Your counsel seems to have dismissed that as being not a big deal because it's only $300. Do you think it wasn't a big deal?
Well, I think everything's on a scale. Everything is scalable, and that's probably on the lower end of the scale of any offences.
And is that why you made a decision not to reveal it in the original application to them?
No, I've answered this question that many times, but no, that's not reason.
When you told Northern Territory recruiters about that charge, it's clear that the story that you told them suggested that in fact you shouldn't have been charged with the offence because you were the one who actually went to the rescue of one of your mates and you were thanked for it. That's the story you told the recruiters.
I told them what had happened.
And that's the story that you told, isn't it?
Well, I told them what happened. I didn't say that I should or shouldn't have been charged. I told them what had happened.
In effect, the story that you're telling actually has you as the hero of that story, rather than someone who should have been accused or charged with any offence. Do you accept that?
I wouldn't say I'm the hero of the story, but correct. And I believe if I did fight and if the police did a further investigation into it, I believe that I wouldn't have got fined.
But you didn't ask them to do a further investigation. You paid the fine and accepted the offence, didn't you?
Correct.
And is it your evidence that you don't recall ever being asked by the recruiters in the Northern Territory why you had failed to reveal that the first time around?
Yeah, I can't recall if they asked or not.
Did you get any feedback at all from the interview process?
I can't recall. I got accepted.
Accepted, and you received the offer of employment on the 22nd of April 2016, is that right?
Yeah, if you say so.
That was the first formal offer that you had received from a police force, correct?
Yes.
So you withdrew your application from Victoria because of that?
Must have, yes.
You were eager to get started?
Yes.
Her Honour has already heard a lot about the training that you and your cohort received around 2016. I'm just going to ask you a few questions about your perception of it.
Yes.
In relation to tactical training, you must have been ahead of the pack, given your army background.
Correct.
And I put to you some other skills that would have been relevant for a police recruit. You, in fact, ducks that year, that cohort, didn't you?
Correct.
And it would have been clear to you that you were someone who others looked up to in that cohort?
I wouldn't say that. I just ducked the course.
You were pretty confident, weren't you, in relation to tactical skills, etc.?
Yes.
Body-worn video was rolled out in the Northern Territory in the first year you commenced as an officer, or it was rolled out in the years after about 2014. It was standard issue by 2017. Were you trained in it?
I believe, I can't recall, I believe so. At some point I received training in it, yes.
And is that likely to have been in the academy during that 6-month period?
Probably.
It's not complicated to use, is it, the body-worn?
The only complicated thing about it is going into stealth mode, which I could never figure out.
All right. Can you tell us about stealth mode?
I couldn't figure out how to do it, so you need to ask someone else.
But for the most part, how do you turn on your body-worn video when you're not going into stealth mode?
There's two, I guess you turn the safety off initially on top, and then you double tap the central button which turns it on.
And after the double tap, it records the 30 seconds prior, is that right?
Unless you hadn't had that safety switch on. So if the safety switch is off, nothing's recording, and you can turn it on and immediately press double tap, and it won't have pre-recorded 30 seconds. But if you turn that on, and then it will start, I guess, having that 30-second backup.
And that's the sort of thing that you were taught when you were being trained on the body-worn video?
Yes.
And for someone like you who had used all sorts of different equipment in the army, I take it that that was not a complicated thing to do?
well, as I just said, I still couldn't figure out how to use stealth mode ever.
Did you understand the body-worn video to be an important tool for evidence collection?
Yes.
And you understood, didn't you, that it might vindicate a police officer if a complaint was made that wasn't accurate?
Potentially.
Or on the other hand, provide proof of an offence or an inappropriate behaviour of the police officer had been involved?
Yeah, potentially.
Amongst your trainee group, did you detect any reluctance when you were being trained in the body-worn video about using it?
Yeah, 100%.
Can you tell everyone about that?
I believe there was, when body worns are rolled out, there was a reluctance by the majority of the police force on the ground. The police force on the ground initially, there was a big kickback. Police believed that body worn video would be a way for professional standards commands to just enable more complaints against police. And it would be utilised to capture language such as swearing, more so than, so there was less concern about collecting evidence and more concern about utilising body-worn video, which would be used against police in the form of complaints through PSC for minor things such as swearing. That was a large kickback, and I was that was the, I guess, the culture or the feeling of body-worn video when I first joined up, and I was a part of that culture and part of that feeling that body-worn video is potentially a bad thing. I believe the police force has changed its mind over the years, and I was a member who definitely changed the minds and saw the positives of body-worn video rather than the opposite of opinion.
How long did it take you to make that shift in your mind about the positives of body-worn?
Honestly, it took me years. It took me years. I still utilised it, but yeah.
Okay, so remember going back, you started at Alice Springs in December 2016.
Yes.
2017, did you have a mindset where you thought it wasn't a good idea to turn on body-worn video?
Mixed feelings again. Again, I don't remember the dates or anything, but again, I was a part of a cohort that had very much mixed feelings. Initially, body-worn video was considered negative. Again, I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm speaking for the cohort that I was with, not my class cohort. But it would have come from the instructors who taught us body-worn video, and then it would have reflected in the police stations. But I can't tell you when it did so much, but I'm jumping ahead of the gun, but after Alistair Gall gave me my second remedial advice on the body-worn video, then it definitely clicked for me.
When was that?
I don't believe it's noted.
Okay.
And I can't recall.
All right, are you able to tell us the year? 2017, 2018, 2019?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was the start of 2019 or the end of 2018. Or.
Okay.
Do you remember the incident? Yeah, sorry.
I remember the incident where body-worn really clicked to me that it was such an important tool, and this was after after I received the second remedial advice from Alistair Gall. I got called to a drunk person job, and by the sound of it, it was just a standard drunk person job to remove a drunken male from a property. So it seemed to be a very minor job. On arrival, I can't even remember my partner at the time, but on arrival, I wasn't driving. I opened the car door and immediately heard two females screaming. And this is a failure by my behalf, because I hadn't been using body-worn video as much up to that point, my muscle memory wasn't to turn the body-worn video on. My first instinct was to go to help the females. The drunk job turned into a male assaulting two pregnant teenagers, one of which was his partner. I stopped the assault, arrested the male, but I didn't have the evidence that would have been additional. And as you're aware, in domestic violence, often victims do not assist police for a number of reasons. And basically, I didn't have the evidence that I should have had to put that man away for as long as he should have gone away. So immediately, after that, I went to Alistair Gall and let him know that I'd made a mistake, and that was when it really clicked to me how important body-worn video was.
And at the very latest, that would have been early 2019, is that right?
I believe so, but I can't be sure.
Prior to that, in terms of any warnings that you got, either individual or through the station, is it fair to say it still didn't click to you that that was an important tool for evidence gathering?
It did, but the attitude still prevailed.
Okay. And the attitude was of suspicion that this was going to be Big Brother or the management looking over you and correcting you for minor mistakes?
I wouldn't say correcting, I would say punishing or like negatively affecting your career for extended amounts of time for minor mistakes. For example, I am aware of a police officer who was investigated for over 12 months for swearing on body-worn video, and the outcome of that investigation was remedial guidance, as you know what that is. But during that time, he was prevented from, I guess, transferring to another police force, which is what he wanted to do for family reasons. So for a minor error like swearing at someone, and it was deemed, I believe the remedial guidance said along the words of, I know this was a stressful situation, just try not to swear. But for that investigation to take a year and a half, this is what we're talking. So it's not a correction, it was seen as a way that you could get, I guess, persecuted in a way from professional standards command.
That attitude, I think you described it as your cohort.
Yes.
You meant not your training group 129.
Yeah.
The patrol groups that you were in Alice Springs.
The Alice Springs Police Station, I worked with a number of patrol groups. I think I officially worked with 3 patrol groups out of the 5, but I tried to work with as many patrol groups as I could, so I had a large base of understanding of the general feelings in the Alice Springs Police Station.
Okay. It sounds like from what you're describing, those feelings were not just amongst the really junior crew. You were getting that vibe from sergeants and senior sergeants as well. Is that right?
Yes. And I can't speak for upstairs. The highest ranking person we had downstairs at the time, I think it's changed, is the OIC of the station, who's a senior sergeant, I believe.
Who was that when you first started in Alice Springs?
Oh, there was multiple. It changed a fair amount.
That's helpful. When you talk about upstairs, downstairs, can you help us with that? So downstairs, the most seniors was senior sergeant, OIC of the station?
Generally, so OIC of the station had the office downstairs on my floor, general duties floor. Upstairs, detectives and above, I'm not really sure.
Okay.
What the hell goes up there.
You mean literally upstairs, downstairs?
Like literally floors of the...
But it also meant that more senior management were upstairs and...
they were physically located upstairs.
So you said detectives and above, is that right?
Generally, yeah.
And is it fair to say then, from what you've told us, that when you first started at Alice Springs at least, that resentment about the use of body-worn video and the way it might be misused by the PSC was from the senior sergeant rank downwards?
Well, I can't speak as, confirmatory as that, but it did exist amongst ranks from constables to senior sergeants. But I'm not speaking for every senior sergeant, I'm not speaking for every sergeant, I'm not speaking for every constable.
Sure, but certainly enough that you detected that there was a culture of...
Yeah, correct. And I think that would you'd probably find that in any police station when body-worns roll out.
But in Alice Springs, because of these particular issues with the PSC, that suspicion lasted at least a couple of years, is that right?
Yes, I think at some point, the general orders changed to say something, and I don't know when this could have been after I left, but the general orders got stronger and stronger to the point where you started having to use body-worn video when you used a police power, and then I believe it may have even got to the point where you have to use your body-worn as soon as you step out of the car or interact with a member of the public. But the rules got stronger to the point where it's enforced. It's enforceable. I think you would have seen when it came out initially, there was no real strong guidelines about when you had to use it, I think.
But certainly I can take you to this later, but by March 2018, there are internal circulars and advice being given, aren't there, in relation to body-worn video?
Yeah, correct. I guess because there was a number of instances where people, including myself, weren't using body-worn video, so they had to get harsher and harsher about, or be more prominent about it.
Might come to that at the relevant time, but you have clarified the general feeling. 20 to 30% of the population in the Northern Territory are Aboriginal Australians, and you've given evidence previously that you hadn't had any significant relationship with Aboriginal Australians. You hadn't had much of an opportunity to get to know them, other than your work in the army. Is that fair?
In the army, I had a number of Indigenous mates, yes.
In answer to a question I asked you before about whether or not you were interested in the NT in particular or just any police force, I think you said any police force, NT effectively was the first one to offer you the job.
Yes. But it was my last preference.
Sorry, your
I think I
last
said it was my last preference, yes.
What was your first preference?
Probably would have been Queensland.
Why was NT bottom of the list?
I'd never been to the NT before. I may have flown through Darwin. I'd never been. It was unknown. I basically just didn't know anything about it. And if I'm looking at somewhere that I would like to live, it's got a beach and mountains and forest. So it's basically a landscape that I'm looking at, not desert.
20 to 30% of the population in the NT are Aboriginal. Were you interested at all in living and policing in an area with such a significant percentage of Aboriginal people? Is that not something that was of interest?
I honestly no consideration about what race someone was, where they were living, where I was living, sorry.
In the November 2022 sittings, when you gave short evidence, I asked you about cultural training or cultural competency, and you said it was a small block.
Yes.
And I reminded you that on the 30th of June 2016, you're recorded as completing an element of training called Respect, Equity and Diversity Online Training.
Yeah.
When I asked you what that was,
Mm.
you said it was pretty self-explanatory. It was teaching us about elements of respect, equity and diversity in the workplace and in the public.
Yes.
I just want to give you an opportunity to expand on that if you want to. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
No, there's not.
It's a pretty basic proposition, isn't it, that you engage respectfully at all times, wherever possible, with members of the community as a police officer,
Yes.
regardless of their sex, cultural background, sexual preference, lifestyle choices, etc., unless they're breaking the law.
Yes.
You didn't have to be told in an online seminar by Northern Territory Police that you should respect people and respect equity and diversity.
No.
It must have been obvious to you before that online seminar that it was unacceptable for a police officer in the Northern Territory or elsewhere to use racist language.
I would say it's unacceptable but accepted in the NT Police. If that makes sense. I know that's confusing, but...
I'm going to ask, well, Gerardo will be interested in what you say about that rather than me, so can you explain that a bit more?
I believe you've had a lot of evidence today that a lot of people in the police force, a lot of witnesses haven't heard or seen racist language in the police force or used in the police force. That's surprising to me to hear. I haven't seen a lot of racist behaviour per se in the police force, but racist language was utilised nearly daily. I got to look, hold up. Racist language was normalised in the NT police force. I think it was, you know Todd Tavern down the corner? You know how there's a section of Todd Tavern that's generally known as Aboriginal only section? Did you know that or no? Okay.
Aboriginal owners?
The Aboriginal only section. Did you guys know that, or is that might just be a police thing? So there's a section of the Todd Tavern that's open between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m, or at least it was when I was here. Then there's the rest of the Todd Tavern, which I believe opens a bit later. It's a pub, pokies thing. That section of the Todd Tavern is called by basically the whole police station in Alice Springs, and I believe to the point where it's mentioned over the radio as the Animal Bar, because it's an Aboriginal only bar. I guess in the muster room, I could hear something racist said nearly every day, and the evidence that I've heard so far from people that have it's only an Alice Springs thing is, I would say, completely wrong. So the NT Police is a small police force, comprising about 1,500 people. If there's a group of people doing something in Darwin, generally we hear about it. And you've heard evidence about the Territory Response Group and how professional they are, and they are the tip of the spear. And from the Territory Response Group, a number of those members have gone on to have high-ranking positions in the police force. I believe Assistant Commissioner James Gracespence was sitting in earlier, Superintendent Gill I believe, last I heard, he was in charge of some form of culture change, and he was over in England, informal recruitment. And Meacham King obviously gave evidence here before. Up until recently, the Territorial Response Group had an annual party where they would issue awards to some of the members. Generally, they have about 35 members, and they have an annual party. Maybe other police go, and amongst the police force, we had heard of this award, and we knew it to be called the Coon of the Year Award. But the actual award, as I'm made aware, is called the Goonator Award for exhibiting the most coon-like behaviour of the year. And the staff would make the recipient dress up in a toga, and they'd give him a wooden club with some nails to the end of it, which would often live above the TRG cave door. And this is accepted, and this is known about by multiple people who have given evidence here, and multiple people have lied about it, and the people who have taken part of it have moved their way up into the executive. And as you said, culture starts at the head. And in a small place like the NT Police, we're going to hear about this kind of stuff, and this does become normalised, to the point where we've even heard about the commissioner getting kicked out of a restaurant in town, an Asian, a Chinese restaurant, for abusing the staff. Apparently they were slow, so he hit them up about if they're still angry at him for what we did to them in Vietnam. And his response to that, when asked by a witness who was there recently, was, we've just moved on from that. So I find it quite strange that the evidence so far that you've heard is that there's that racist language hasn't been normalised by the NT Police. I could go on. Like, you even have Colleen Gwynn, NT Assistant Commissioner. She's recorded as calling someone a fat gin. She's spent how many years in the NT Police? I'm not saying that she's the only one. I'm just saying, like, she's an NT Police Assistant Commissioner using racist language. Racist language is used everywhere in the NT Police.
Heard, though, Mr. Rock. Can you tell
So
us
I've used...
what you've heard? I'll come to you.
So obviously I've heard about all that award. We talked about that.
Were you present for any of these?
I was not in TRG, so I didn't attend their annual party.
How did you hear about it?
Through other TRG members who have gone throughout the police force.
Any of them have given evidence in this proceeding?
No.
Any of them who are still serving members of the Northern Territory Police Force?
Potentially.
I'm going to ask Mr. Coleridge to tear off a piece of paper and give it to you and ask you to write their names down, please.
I might talk to my lawyer before this. The best person to speak to about this would be James Gray Spence if he was still in the room. I'm sure he's close by. He is.
Why do you say that James Gray Spence is the best person?
Or him or Superintendent Gill or potentially Meacham King, if they're willing to give evidence on it. And I know there's a stream happening, so I'd remind them that there's photos and videos of this ceremony occurring.
But why do you say that they're the best people? Because they're currently in the TRG.
Because they were there when the award was given out, from what I've heard.
I see. So those three persons who you named, you have had information that they would be present at a ceremony when that award.
Correct.
And when I say award, I mean in inverted commas. What you mean there?
What's called an award? Mocking Aboriginal people, right. Yes.
Are clearly racist.
100%, yes.
When did you first hear about that?
This is whilst in the police force.
Pretty early on in your career in the police force?
I was only in there a short while, so when I think within my second year I started having interactions with TRG. So it could have been, when did I join IRT? 2017. Oh, so it could have been the first year. Because within IRT I started having interactions with TRG.
What about, I might take you back there over the break and have an opportunity to speak with you about it. But what about within the IRT? Did you hear any of those attitudes expressed?
No.
So at the start of your training with the NT Police, I took you to that online seminar that you did, and you did some other training on cross-cultural issues. Did it occur to you then, as a young recruit, that you would hear that racist language?
No, but I guess in hindsight, so I guess the normalisation of language against offenders would start in police speak. For example, the first time I heard the word scrote was a word described by recruit trainers in police school to describe an offender, or a particularly dirty offender, scrote, i.e. scrotum. So I guess it starts there in the why that we can't start kind of separating offenders from everyone else. And language is used for that. I
just want to stop you there. So you mean you started to hear this word scrote used to describe offenders who were deemed to be dirty, and
yes.
then it started to become common usage for someone who was deemed to be dirty, regardless of whether they were an offender.
Oh no, generally that would be used as an offender. But I'm talking about how you take this one step at a time down the path to normalisation. So I guess it would start with that, like you utilise words to describe an offender. For example, if 9 out of 10 jobs we went to were plumbers, we'd probably start talking a lot of shit about plumbers, just because it's natural. But this is the steps. Like, we'll start there. It wasn't until we'd moved down to, or when I moved down to the station, where I guess racist language would become more and more normalised. But in the NT, it's a bit confusing as well, because in the NT, amongst the locals, we would utilise words such as, you wouldn't start it, but if you're engaging with people in town camps and stuff, it's often that they would use words like half-caste or quarter-caste to describe someone. Now, if I was to use half-caste or quarter-caste interstate, which I have used after working here because it becomes so normalised and it's accepted amongst people working on the streets, it's deemed or it could be deemed racist, I guess.
Sure.
But here, that kind of becomes normalised. And now I'm not making an excuse for the further words than that, but it becomes normalised in a way that it's a bit.
Okay, so let's put that to one side. I understand the distinction you're making there.
Yeah.
Accepting that you understand that quarter caste or half caste is a racist term, but you're saying it might be used up here in a way it wasn't understood to be racist.
Well, I'm not saying it's a racist term, because the way it was used here was not in a racist way.
Okay, let's put that one to one side.
But I'm saying how it can get confusing, and you can go from saying, because, for example, I've never said quarter caste or half caste before moving to the NT. And then it becomes normalised for me to say quarter caste or half caste after working here, which can be potentially deemed racist to say that, but it becomes completely normal.
Had you ever heard the term coon before you started working in the Northern Territory Police Force?
Yes.
Whereabouts?
I guess through schooling, through the army.
Was it a term used in the army to talk about Aboriginal people?
It wasn't used much, but it was used. But it wasn't used much.
In a way, though, that was that you became desensitised to it?
I guess it was slightly, but it wasn't until the NT Police where that, I guess, occurred. And I still wouldn't say that I'm desensitised to using it.
Come back to the station when you got here in December 2016 and 2017, 2018. When you started working with the TRG through 2017...
having interactions with them, yes, but not working with them, yeah.
Having interactions, you heard about this party.
Yeah.
What language did you yourself hear the TRG use, if any, that was racist?
Well, the same as across the police. You'd hear the terms coon, sand, N-word.
I appreciate you don't want to say that word. You mean the...
Yeah, what's been said in the text messages previously.
Yeah.
Look, there's a number of racist language that's said in the muster room, but against multiple races. But speaking about language, yes.
What percentage of the population who you were arresting do you think were Aboriginal people?
Well, I think the stats would put it about 95, 96%.
So is it fair to say that even if racist language was used about a number of different races, for the most part, the racist language was about Aboriginal people?
Yes.
You have given us an example in the use of the term coon and the other word you used. What else did you hear when you got to Alice Springs?
I guess it would be those two, gin jockey, to talk about a white person or a person of another race who would be sleeping with an Aboriginal. And then the animal bar was used every day. The animal bar was used every day to talk about if we're going through the animal bar to look for a warrant or someone's located at the animal bar.
So in terms of the use of those terms, you gave an example of the upstairs, downstairs difference in Alice Springs.
Yeah.
Were those terms used frequently when you got to Alice Springs by sergeants and senior sergeants?
No, I said I'd have less involvement with sergeants and senior sergeants, so it'd be more amongst the constables, sorry.
So sure, the constables who've been there for some period of time, is that right?
Yeah, I believe the more time, the more normalised that race language would become.
Did it shock you that they were using that language?
I guess it shocked me at the start, but then as you said, you become desensitised to it.
Did you raise it with any of your superiors? You were concerned about the use of language?
No, never.
Were you ever concerned about the use of that racist language?
I never saw it used at an individual or in public, I guess. I never saw it used in public or directed towards an individual who someone was speaking to. And I never raised it. At the end of the day, no. I guess the concern minimised the point where I didn't raise it.
Okay, you've had plenty of time to reflect over the last couple of years. Do you think now you have more awareness about how problematic the use of that language is than you did when you were in the police force?
100%.
Can you tell everyone about that?
Well, I can only speak for myself, and I know that there are studies that do show that the normalisation of that language can dehumanise someone, and as that's been used in the past by militaries in war situations, it's utilised as a tool to dehumanise the enemy. I can speak for me only that I can tell you that wasn't the case for me. The fact that I've, for example, said coon in my messages, the fact that that's been made public, which would have caused hurt to a number of people, especially kids who should have been able to trust the police force, like that kills me. So I'm sorry for that, but I can't take it back.
But you've obviously reflected. I can see that you're a big reader.
Yeah.
And you read things that challenge you as well, is that right?
Yeah, correct. One of the messages that doesn't make sense is about that.
Do you now accept that the use of the language in the police station, like the racist language you've told us about, is likely to have had an impact on the policing behaviour of some of the officers in Alice Springs?
I can't speak on behalf of others, but I'd accept it if it had, but I can't speak on behalf of others.
But you've reflected on the behaviour of some other officers in terms of the use of language. Did you see behaviour towards Aboriginal people that you thought was dismissive, for example?
I don't know.
Do you think?
Perhaps people, there's certain situations, I've never seen someone treated differently due to their race. I have probably seen Caucasians treated dismissively, and same goes. But if someone's treated dismissively, I would say it's generally because of how that officer is feeling on the day, not because from what I've seen, not because of any racial connotations, if that makes sense.
Do you appreciate, given the reading that you've done about dehumanising and the use of racist language, that there might be occasions where someone was just treated in a dismissive or even rough way, where you didn't pick it up that was related to police attitudes?
There's potentially, but I can't say yes or no, but yes, potentially.
I note that we're going to break at 12:30. Before we do, in fairness to some of the officers that we've nominated, we are going to have to investigate those issues further.
Yeah.
I will ask you, whether it's admissible or not, we can deal with, but would you please take a piece of paper that Mr. Coleridge gave to you and provide the names of officers who you say you've heard are using that racist language?
Well, I will consider that request on his behalf and speak to counsel assisting as to whether it's appropriate.
Well, it's been asked in examination.
Yes, I know. There's a question about the desirability of this happening, and there are other. I want to talk to my client about it, and he wants to talk. He wants to talk to me about it as well.
Sure.
It's a contentious.
You can have that opportunity, Mr. Rolfe.
And while I'm on my feet, Your Honour, could I ask about the possibility of you sitting extended hours to finish this man's cross-examination?
He's in examination.
I'm sorry.
And we are sitting extended hours. We're sitting from 9:30 to 4:30, as I understand it, which is extended hours.
Sorry.
If it becomes apparent that we need to sit longer hours, I would check with the availability of everybody, and we have also started at 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
But we'll see how we go today, and if that arises, I'm happy to check that it's suitable for everyone and to start earlier in the morning.
I'm conscious of the assessments that were given by various counsel. And I'd like to make sure we adhere to it if possible.
I'm conscious of them as well, so I'd like to adhere to them as well. But we'll adjourn for lunch.
On your voice, we're early adjourned.